Good morning, Giants. I'm going to talk about today difficult emotions and how to regulate and manage those and learn to develop coping tools to be able to work through them. One of the better tools that I found in a survival state, so when your mind is just flooded and your body is flooded with emotions, dialectical behavioral therapy is probably the best thing to do to learn to manage those intense emotions. I think it was Marshall Linehan back in the early 80s was the one that came up with this theory that it wasn't about addressing the thinking behind these emotions. It was about recognizing them, surviving them, and then re-engaging with life. And so whenever I'm coaching a client, I always talk to them about intense emotions and kind of having an emergency toolkit on hand for your emotions, to be able to recognize what's at play and then to go back into your tools so that you can get back to consciousness and back to your life. The big thing, with Marshall Linehan, let me just make sure I got her name right. Yeah. She created this for borderline personality disorder, which is a disorder. It is a disorder in the brain where a person's brain doesn't shut off when emotions flood. And so in a normal situation, when somebody has anxiety or the adrenals start firing, their emotions increase. And part of that, I think, is that the body is trying to remember. So the amygdala and the hippocampus in your brain, the amygdala is what fires the adrenaline and tells the body to send that off. And then the hippocampus is what stores memory. Now, memory is important for our bodies for survival. It goes all the way down to a cellular level. Our white blood cells have memory cells, and they also have cells that attack viruses and sicknesses. And so memory is a biological thing, and it's meant to protect us and keep us alive. And so it makes sense that with the sense of smell, and I'll loop this all back, just stay with me for a minute. The sense of smell is our strongest memory trigger because it bypasses the thalamus, which is the center of the brain that says, hey, we should worry about this or we shouldn't. And the sense of smell goes right into the brain, it goes right into the amygdala and the hippocampus. And that's why the emotions are stronger around smell, and that's why our memories are stronger when there's a smell present. There's over 1,000 types of sensors in your nose that just pick up smells. Now, with that, so that being said, is your amygdala and your hippocampus, they go to work to flood your body with the adrenals to just get your body ready to take on whatever's coming at it. And then the memory is so that you'll remember that experience. So if it occurs again, you can be prepared for it and know what to do when that happens in your life. Now, what happens in the case of a person with borderline personality disorder is they don't have the ability to shut off those emotions. Those emotions in their brain, that center of their brain that shuts that off, doesn't work properly. And so their body gets flooded with intense emotions, and then they're reactive at that point. Now, this is helpful if you're not borderline or you have other intense emotions. This is helpful because you're going to learn some tools to be able to work through some of the strongest emotions you face. And especially right now, this is a kind of a practice, kind of a training ground, you could say, with everything that's going on around us, the media, the news, the virus, the economy. There's all these things that we could get spun up in. And so to work through that, dialectical behavioral therapy, we call it DBT, gives you tools to kind of work through those intense emotions to get your brain back. And then once you have your brain back, then you can act and start doing things. Because there will be points where you are almost completely unconscious, and the goal is to minimize damage during that unconsciousness. When the adrenals fire, just to be clear on this, when the anxiety floods your body, and your adrenals fire for about 6 to 10 seconds there, your brain's going to shut off. You're going to be unconscious. That's why people, when they're angry, they count to 10, is to give their brain a chance to come back to consciousness so that they can make a rational decision. Now, if you get triggered, something occurs in your environment, you want to have a toolbox that you can go to kind of handle and survive those difficult emotions. And that's where DBT comes in. So the first thing is to recognize the emotion. All right, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm sad, I'm whatever that emotion is, it comes up and it floods you and it's intense. So to recognize what's at play, that you're anxious, that you're sad, depressed, and it's so intense that it's flooding you and you're not able to think straight. The next thing is to minimize the damage or allow for it to be there and just say, hey, it is what it is. It's present. And I'll explain how the brain works and how it works with you to create new pathways. So even though initially this is going to be challenging, with practice and time, it's going to get easier and easier. And so we can bypass what isn't working to create a new pathway that will help us through these situations. So you want to be aware of what's at play. I'm anxious, right? You want to regulate the emotions. Hey, it's okay. I'm anxious. I need to step back probably from this conversation. Can you give me a minute? And then you want to be able to manage those emotions. And it's okay to distract here. Sometimes I'll go for a walk. Sometimes I'll watch a show. I'll play a game. I'll do something to take my mind off that emotion and not necessarily ignore it or avoid it, but just take the intensity off of it by putting my attention somewhere else. And then what we want to do is be able to communicate clearly. So to do that, we need to get back into our conscious mind. So we want to calm down. We want to do our breathing exercises. We want to distract a little bit. You may reach out to a friend. I reach out to friends or family members. If my emotions are intense, I'll reach out to somebody and just have a conversation. And sometimes that's enough to bring me back to normal. What will occur with this is initially those emotions might override you and you'll go into a survival mode, and you can be very destructive in that survival mode. It's all about survival. So you don't care who you hurt or what you say or what occurs because you're surviving. And so that's where it can be very damaging. People can be very controlling. They can be untrusting. They can make accusations. They can do all kinds of things in that heavy, heavy emotion that just create damage. And so your goal is to recognize what's at play. So if I know I'm anxious and what occurs when I'm anxious, then I could say, look, when I'm anxious, I need to do this, and pull out your toolkit and just say, look, I'm going to go distract. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to separate from friends for a minute just so I can get my brain back. I'm going to call a friend and see if we can talk through this. Your goal is to just get those emotions back in check. And so if they're so intense that you're having a hard time doing that, definitely reach out to somebody. Emotion regulation, just going into the idea of just getting it back to normal, being okay with it, allowing yourself some room to kind of go through it, allowing it to be present. I think in the resistance of it, that we don't want it there, that we fight it, that it just persists. And so the more we can just allow it to be present, flood our body. Hey, it's anxiety. Hey, it's depression. Hey, I'm just feeling really crappy right now. Allowing for that gives you room to grow through it. If there's no tolerance, then we get brittle and we break and we snap. We use all these words and we lose our stuff on people, and then we hurt relationships, friendships. We hurt our lives. And so the goal is just let it be present. It's okay for it to be present. Go do that walk, talk to a friend, do that thing, and then communicate clearly what you need from people. If somebody continually triggers you, you get to start to own your voice. Like, you don't get to do that to me. I have boundaries around this for a reason. It's because, what is it, the Hulk? You won't like me when I'm angry, kind of a thing. You want to clearly communicate with people what your needs are, and also be aware of what your needs are so that you don't put yourself in situations like that, because then when it goes and your emotions are intense and you create all this damage, man, I love the analogy of the Hulk right here. He just destroys everything and then he's left cleaning up the mess. The Hulk is such a great analogy for this. So when you understand that you have these intense emotions, you learn how to manage them, you become kind of like Professor Hulk, where he's a combination of this strong, hulkish man that can destroy anything, but also crazy intelligent. He's learned to balance the two energies there, and that's what you're trying to do. And so, look, we're all going to go through intense emotions. We're all going to get really sad, depressed, anxious at times. It's going to be more than we can handle. And so it's important to go back to our toolbox and remember, hey, this is what I do. It's okay. I have tools to manage it. When this occurs, I'm going into that toolbox until I can get my conscious mind back. And then I'm going to re-engage. You've got to re-engage with your life. Keep creating. keep doing what you want to do in a good, healthy way. Go out there and re-engage with something positive in your life. For me, I talk about this book a lot, but this book has been a savior for me in a sense because it's given me something to put my attention into. Whenever I get into a down mode or an anxious mode, I always re-engage with that. And so that gives me that something to put my energy into that's creative rather than destructive. And so find something positive that you can create into and re-engage with that. Even things like this, just sharing emotions, sharing vulnerability. Vulnerability means we're wounded. Maybe we are, and maybe you need to seek therapy to kind of work through that, and that would be helpful. But being open about what you're really experiencing and learning to communicate that with others is helpful in getting those emotions back to a normal state. So now, real quickly, I just want to explain what occurs in the body with this. When you're creating a new pathway, a neural pathway in your brain, you want to look at it kind of like your arm and your hands here. It's kind of like you've got an axon, you've got the neuron, the soma, and then you've got the synaptic connections. So whenever you create a new pathway, it fires fairly slow. And the reason it fires slow, the slowest firing neuron in the body is about 1 mile per hour. The fastest is 268 miles per hour, which is incredibly fast. It's faster than a Bugatti Veyron at top speed. And so what occurs is as you use a neural connection, this is called plasticity, as you create a new neural connection, it starts out really slow, right? Then these things called oligodendrocytes come in and they wrap it in what's called a myelin sheath. And that sheath is insulation around the axon. And what it does is it causes the neuron to fire faster and faster and faster and faster. So the more you use the neuron, or that new behavior, the better it gets because your body goes in and supports, wraps this axon with a myelin sheath like this. It fires faster, faster, faster until you're doing things without consciously thinking about them. It's incredible to see people who have lost arms or limbs that learn to reuse that part of their body or the neurons in that part of their body, the nerves, to create a new behavior. Our brains are plastic, meaning that for our whole lives, we can create new pathways. So even if you're not very good at this, with time and practice and persistence, your body will come in and support you and make you effective at that thing. Now, what you have to learn to do is allow for the old behaviors to be present because they will be. And so those old pathways that you've created that make you very efficient at being destructive are still going to be there. So what you need to do is allow for those to be there and then put the energy, reroute it over to the new behavior. Because in creating that new behavior, it will strengthen, and with time, this will diminish. It won't go away, but it will diminish, and its power will be lessened. And what will strengthen is the one that you use. And so that's the way your brain works. And so you've got neurons, you've got oligodendrocytes, astrocytes, you got microglia up there. Those are all support structures. You've got more support in your brain than you do neurons. You've got about 3.75 times the amount of glial cells as you do neurons in your brain. And you have over 86 billion neurons in your brain. So you have the brain, you have the capacity to do this. It just takes time and practice and persistence. And you've got to be patient with yourself. You're going to be terrible at it at first. It's going to be difficult. You're going to be clumsy. But as you do it more and more and more, you're going to get efficient at it. So kind of to recap here, when you have a difficult emotion, number one is recognize I'm having a difficult emotion. It's okay for it to be present. I'm going to tolerate and deal with the emotion and just survive the emotion till I can get my conscious brain back. And then once I get my conscious brain back, I'm going to re-engage with what I want to create. So this is how you can be creative even if you're highly anxious. This is how I've been able to do it with the generalized anxiety disorder, where I'm constantly firing. Is that my body is flooded with adrenaline constantly, and I'm still able to go out there and create something positive in this world. It doesn't mean that I don't feel anxious. I feel anxious all the time. It doesn't mean I don't feel down. I feel down a lot, but I re-engage. I keep re-engaging, and that's getting easier and easier to do. And so I hope this is helpful. I hope you guys go out and make it a giant day. find something that you can put your energy into that's creative. If the news triggers you, stay away from it. If you recognize that's your trigger, stay away from it. If there's certain people that trigger you consistently, why are you around them? You get to decide what comes into your space. So decide that. I get to do the same. And so go make it a giant day. Let me know if you have questions or comments. I got to be clear, I'm not a therapist. If you need therapy, you need to go to a therapist. That's not what I'm designed to do. I can coach you, but I can't be your therapist. There's a big difference there. So with severe things that need to be worked through, it's important to get professional help. So you guys go make it a giant day. Let me know if you have questions, post your comments, and if you think this would be helpful to somebody you know, please share it. We'll talk to you in the next video.